What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 81 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, we're talking about The Farewell. We're going to eat some chips. I'm going to tell you all about Madden NFL 20's Face of the Franchise mode. We'll look forward to this week's new release, and I'll tell you all about the streams happening over on twitch.tv/SeanOsaurusRex. We'll start this week's episode with The Farewell, and this movie is absolutely tremendous. I'm so thankful that it's finally here, and I got to see it, and I loved all of it. The story is super simple. A family goes back to China. Their grandmother has stage 4 lung cancer. She's been given 3 months to live. The trick to them going back is it's actually like a bit of a ruse. They're trying to convince her that one of her relatives is getting married, and that's an excuse for everyone to join up together. And what I like so much about the simplicity of the story is it allows us to not really worry too much about it. We have that time limit in our head. We know that this is probably the last time a lot of these people are ever going to see her. And so, because we have the beginning and we have the end, we get to be engrossed during the middle of it. We get to listen to these conversations, and we get to follow this family's journey from point A to point B and watch them, set up this wedding and have this kind of subtle intensity of oh, what if someone tips their hand just a little bit too far? What if somebody does say something that tips her off, because they have so many different wheels spinning. They have the wedding that they're trying to plan, and they're trying to bring a lot of people in so that everyone can see her, but they have different people getting test results that may not be in on the lie, and all these different wheels spinning lend to a very, very subtle intensity. Intensity feels like the wrong word, but it is one of those things where there's a moment where someone goes to get test results and they go, uh-oh, this could be a very, very big problem. While we're there, the family has very typical family get-togethers. They have big meals, and they all are sharing stories and talking, and all of it is very understandable and relatable. And even if it isn't necessarily super relevant to the plot, there's one particular conversation that happens about something about the way parents sometimes view their kids as playing the stock market, where they seem to hope that their kid is successful versus a different kid. And it's a really engrossing and interesting conversation, but it doesn't necessarily have any sort of bearing on the outcome of the plot, but it's still engrossing. And again, it goes back to that simplicity thing of, I know the setup, I know kind of where it's going, because I don't have to worry about plot B line hasn't shown up in a while, and plot C is going to show up at some point and it hasn't been talked about in a while, and what's going on with that. I get to be engrossed in these conversations. And while I may not personally super relate to them, they're understandable in a way that makes them so engaging. It also asks the fascinating question of, what does it mean to lie in a family unit? And that goes from the very mundane of one character saying, I'm at your aunt's house, when really they're at a hospital, or I'm talking to a friend when it's really a stranger on the street. And that idea of these small little white lies just so you don't worry your family members, because you don't want to do that. But why have such a big lie to hide such important information from someone that you love? And they don't just ask these questions. They show why. They demonstrate. They explain why this family wants to keep this secret withheld. And it's so fascinating and interesting and heart-wrenching. And it's one of those things where it feels like it's slowly building up to this big, crushing moment, but there's so many little pokes and prods of emotional resonance throughout this movie. It's filled with heart, it's filled with humor, it's filled with kindness and sweetness and thoughtfulness, and it is a wonderful movie. And I have a hard time talking about it without choking up, because the end part of this movie is so devastatingly beautiful. I have not sobbed at a movie in years. The first thing I thought of was the end of Toy Story 3 or the beginning of Up, or when I was a much younger kid, but I'm sure it would still affect me now, is the end of The Iron Giant, where I went and I saw this movie by myself, and I'm just sitting in the theater just, oh, please, you gotta calm down, you have to just breathe in, and you need to breathe out, and tears are just streaming down my face, and it is so wonderful. I adore everything about this movie. The writing is terrific. It has an amazing emotional punch. It feels so moving and powerful and wonderful and just hard to swallow, but still leaves a smile on your face sort of thing. The performances across the board are great, in particular with Awkwafina, who I first saw in last year's Ocean's 8 and really enjoyed, and I'm glad to see her in a starring role she's absolutely fantastic. And so is Xiaozhen Xiao, and I am terribly sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'm very, very sorry. But your performance was amazing. It's her first time ever doing a movie that's her literal only IMDb credit, and she knocks it out of the park. She does such a great job of crafting this grandma to be like multi-layered and interesting in a way that feels like a relatable grandma should. Like, she can be a little bit tough and like a little bit stubborn in some ways, but she also cares deeply for her family, and she's very sweet and funny, and it's just like it is an amazing performance. And I hope that both Awkwafina and her get nominations and awards recognition as the year continues. She, along with Awkwafina, give two of the best performances I've seen this year, and it really makes that emotional punch so much more poignant and so much like harder. Like, it's one thing to create characters that you enjoy and be like, man, I'm really bummed, but for it to just hit, and it hits in various other spots as well. The movie is just so good. It's so thoughtful and smart and kind and caring and just wonderful from start to finish, and everything that happens from the beginning and leading up to that big like emotional like evisceration of me felt so good. It felt just right and relatable and just astonishing. Like, this is a tremendous film from start to finish, and I loved every bit of it. I can't recommend this movie enough. I think everyone that has the opportunity to see it should go see it. It is that good. It is fascinating. I'm gonna, at some point, I'm gonna run out of positive words to give this movie because I love it so much. Please go see The Farewell. It is well worth your time, and it is a wonderful, wonderful film. After The Farewell, I needed to find some way to decompress, and it turns out that like 45 straight minutes of just bawling your eyes out really makes you hungry. Thankfully, our friends over at Lay's have just the snack for us. Some weird flavor. It's fried pickles with ranch sauce. Ooh, can we do the little thing? Oh, there you go. There you go. I don't know if that picked up on the microphone, but hey! So we're going to try these out. I think this is part of their Flavors of America thing, but it doesn't have any of the branding on it, and I didn't see any of the typical, like, submit your flavors now, and then they'll be in stores now sort of marketing. So I think this might just be, like, kind of a weird flavor, but it's actually not that weird of a flavor because they already have a dill pickle flavor, so it's not, I don't know. It's kind of just a mess, but they're fried pickle with ranch, so we're going to give them a shot. Funny story about these. I thought this was the only size bag that they had, so I bought them when I bought them. Funny story about these, I actually thought these was... Funny story about these, I thought this was the only size bag they had, so I bought it, and then today when I went to the store to grab something to drink, I noticed that they had these in a much smaller size bag, so now I have way too big of a bag. This is a net weight, what? 7 3/4 ounce. I have a 7 3/4 ounce bag of fried pickles with ranch chips. So let's give these chips a try. I bought them specifically because I do actually like fried pickles. I don't typically eat them with ranch, I don't believe. Usually the sauce that I get them with is like more of a tan color, not the white of the ranch. But I am excited to try these out. So let's open the bag. Also, it's a nice color of green. I like green, so there you go. Okay, they don't smell great. There's a lot of pickle, and then like a nice kick of ranch. Whoo, that was a lot. It's like 50-50. Half of it was, I don't think they smell great. The other half of it was, I took like a big old whiff, was like, really get in there sort of thing. Oh boy, these are pungent. What have I gotten myself into? This was the most unnormal flavor they had, the most unusual flavor. They had like deep dish pizza, and I was like, nope, get the pickles. Oh boy. So that's kind of what they look like. They're a little darker They have a little green sprinkle on them. I don't know how well that shows up on camera. Oh, you can see it. You can see it according to my monitor. Okay, they smell a little bit better outside the bag. Like there's just a lot going on in here. They smell better individually. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but oh boy, these are something. So we're going to grade these on a curve, kind of like we did with the Hostess Twinkies that we did a couple weeks ago. If you are grading them from an objective standpoint and you are saying, do they taste like fried pickles with ranch, you would have to grade them and pardon me. You would have to grade them very positively because boy do they taste like pickles and ranch. That is not good though. I really don't like these at all. I like fried pickles. Ugh. Ugh. Do I eat another one? Something about this like makes me want to vomit. Oh my god. There's that ranch kick. I mean, there's a pickle. These are so bad. These are awful. They nail what they're going out for, but I don't like them. I like fried pickles. I really do. Oh my goodness. Maybe look for the small bag that's like $1.89 and don't buy this one. Granted, I got this on sale, so it wasn't that much of a loss, but get the small bag to try them out. I don't like these at all. Let's put them away. Oh. Ugh. Gross. People are going to think I'm being dramatic about it, but I'm really not. Those are disgusting. So now that we've decompressed fully from the farewell, and even though those chips didn't help, let's talk about Madden NFL 20's Face of the Franchise mode. Madden came out last week, and I was thinking about talking about the game more in depth, but then I realized that I don't really like Ultimate Team, and B, I don't play the game in depth enough to be able to really tell you much about the intricate differences year to year. So like if I were to play franchise mode this year, I don't really have anything to compare it to. I feel like if I played the franchise mode now, it would probably give me a good base to review next year's game, but because I don't really have much to look back on, it's hard to tell you what would be good or not about it. And the same would go for the regular play-by-play action. Like I could tell you that I enjoyed it or I didn't enjoy it, but I don't really feel like I'd be able to give you a very in-depth review on it, so I'm just going to skip all that, and I'm just going to talk strictly about the quarterback one Face of the Franchise mode. I keep putting QB1 in there. I don't think it's actually the title of it, but that's what it says on the screen, so it's stuck in my head. Anyway, I think the Face of the Franchise mode is a really great new addition to the game. It takes a little bit of what the NCAA football and the Madden games used to do in their respective Road to Glory and Superstar modes, and combines some very light elements from the long shot mode and kind of mashes them all up together to make a really engaging and fun solo mode that has some very minor problems in it. If you don't know, the Road to Glory and the Superstar mode were basically you pick your player, you pick your position, and that's all you play. You're locked into that player. If you're a receiver, you run the routes. If you're a quarterback, you do everything. If you're a running back, you run the ball. You can play on defense as well. And I'm really glad to see this sort of mode return because it was my favorite mode from those games. Face of the Franchise starts with you where you create your character and then you have to pick which college school you want to go to. You can pick between 10 schools. You can pick between the Florida Gators, the Oregon Ducks, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, the Oklahoma Sooners, LSU Tigers, USC Trojans, Texas Longhorns, Clemson Tigers, Miami Hurricanes and the Florida State Seminoles. And this is not a great selection of schools. There are no Big Ten teams in there. There are some weird Big 12 teams. There's only one SEC team. There are a couple ACC teams. It's weirdly spread out, but it's missing like what feel like perennial powers in college football of like Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, even like a Wisconsin, stuff like that. And so it's odd that the selection is so low, but it turns out that a lot of this stuff isn't actually going to matter as the stuff progresses. And that's the weirdest thing about this game. So I talked a little bit about what it pulls from the Road to Glory / Superstar mode. And this is the part of the game where it pulls the most from the Road to Glory aspect of it. In Road to Glory, you play through your high school career to get recruited. In this, you play through the college football playoffs after selecting one of those 10 teams, and you're trying to win the national championship to go to the draft combine to improve your stock to get drafted highly and, you know, start as a quarterback in the NFL. After you pick which college you want to play for, it starts to pull a little more from the long shot side of things. And it focuses a little bit more on the story, and it has some light dialogue options. This is where the game like gets its biggest knock from me. It does a really great job at setting up a story here. You're a 5-star recruit. I chose to go play for Oregon. And then some other recruit shows up and takes your starting job, and then you never play in the NFL, and it advances 4 years, which is a little bit weird, but now it starts to make sense why they only have 10 schools in there, because you're only supposed to play 2 games. And this is the most unbelievable part of the game, where they're talking to the Good Morning Football crew, which is an actual show on NFL Network, and they're talking about how, like, this starter has never taken a college snap, which is unbelievable, because a school like Oregon and a school like any of those other schools as well is going to bring in some shoddy garbage B grade team in their like opening week to like beat up on, and you figure when they're blowing them out by like 75 points because that's what they do, you figure at some point the quarterback that you play as would get an opportunity to take at least a college snap. So like that was one of the things where I was like, I watch enough college football to know that every once in a while in like garbage time, I should at least theoretically get snaps. It's not primetime snaps. It's not starting a game. Like I get that. And I think if they had gone with the angle of, and he's never started a game in his college career, I think that's a lot better. But thankfully, due to injury, you actually get to start the semifinal for the college football playoff. And this is where the story arc gets a little bit weird. It gives you backstory on one of your receivers who really wants to win the college football playoff or the national championship for his brother who had passed away. Okay, that makes sense. Fine, we're good so far. You also have an interview with a journalist who asks you exactly what team you're playing, and you actually get to pick one of the 9 teams that you didn't pick to play for. You get to pick who you play against, which I thought was a little bit odd. You get some conversations with your coaches, you get some more dialogue options. It seems to be boosting certain stats of like team leader or selfish or chemistry or whatever the heck. I wasn't really paying attention to that. I was more locked in on the story. And then there's the aspect that you play the entire game. The draw to me with the Road to Glory or the Superstar or now the Face of the Franchise mode is that I play as one character and I control their actions and their actions alone. And yes, it's incredibly frustrating because the computer makes boneheaded decisions all the time where you have like a clear running lane in front of you, but instead you make a sweet juke to the left, even though there's no defender. And because you make that move, the guy comes down, he tackles you for no gain, and now all of a sudden, instead of an automatic or easy first down that you should have had, it's now 4th down and we have to punt the ball down 10 or whatever the situation is. But in the college football playoff, you play the entire game as every single position, and that is the most bizarre decision that they make, where it's like, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to play as the quarterback and we'll breeze through this nice and easy. It took me like an hour and a half to get those 2 games done because I won the first game. And after you win the first game, you get more of a backstory on the wide receiver. And then he introduces you to someone who has leukemia, and she meets you and she gives you a challenge. She wants you to throw 4 touchdowns. You can either accept or decline the challenge. I chose to accept the challenge. And that's like a little bit of a precursor or tutorial to stuff that happens a little bit later in the game. Then you play the national championship, which I won. Get his story all done, get the wide receiver story all done because he really wants to win it for his brother. Cool, we're all good. You then go to the draft combine where you meet this really super weird agent who feels like he's ripped straight out of a Grand Theft Auto game where like he's like super shady and weird, and you're like, boy, if you were written by Rockstar, you would be the guy that they use to make fun of agents because you're like super seedy and weird. Then you perform in the draft combine, and then you go to the draft. I did pretty okay at the combine. I think I was like 16 for 24 or something like that. So it ended up with me getting drafted in the late first round. I think it was picked 26 or something, 24, 26, one of those two numbers. It flashed on the screen like every single game, and I just never retained the information. And I went to Oakland, which sucks because I don't really like them. After you get drafted, you go to the NFL preseason, and this is where the game makes a really weird decision. All the characters that you've interacted with going, or like leading up to this, all this backstory that they've set up, all this work that they've done to like make you care and make you excited about like what's going on or interested in what's going on, they slowly disappear. So in the first week of the season, you get a text from your number one fan. Her name is Emily. She was the one who gave you the challenge before the national championship game. That's the only time she texts you. She's like, hey, I want you to play really well. And you say, great, got it. Number one. You play really well, you complete that challenge, then you never hear from her again. And it's like, okay, that's kind of weird. You don't hear from the receiver until like week 4, week 6, somewhere in there. And he asks you a question about like, what's the biggest change, or what's the thing that I should look forward to in the NFL? Okay, like that's cool. Maybe I'll hear from him again a couple times. I thought maybe it would lead to a situation later on down the line where maybe you would talk with the coaches and be like, hey, I played with this kid in college. You guys should try and draft him if you can get him at a good spot in like the second round. I don't know, whatever. Like it gives you options to try and help you to entice your coaches to get your former teammate back, and then you like ride off into the sunset playing professional football together. I thought that would happen. Never got another text message from him. Never saw him again. The quarterback whisperer shows up every once in a while, and he'll be like, hey, you threw a lot of interceptions in that game. And I'm like, yes, I know. I don't need you to remind me. And he can help give you boosts to your stats. It's super weird. You spent like 2 hours building all this stuff up, and then we're just like, we're done. We'll throw it away. No, we don't care. None of it ever really matters. None of it shows up. So it's like, why is it even there in the first place? Just have me start at the combine, call it good, tell you what school I went to. Fantastic. It's such a weird juxtaposition of, we really want to set all this stuff up, and then, hey, we don't really care, we're just going to get rid of it. It's really odd. The biggest addition to it, the leveling system, to borrow a term from RPG games, the leveling system in this is super nice. It used to be kind of muddled in the older versions of the Road to Glory and the Superstar mode, just because once you got like a certain amount of XP or whatever, it would just give you stat points, and then you would have to allocate those stat points to a bunch of different ratings to hopefully raise your overall rating, because there was typically an achievement to get to a certain level if it was like 80 or 99 or whatever. And that just wasn't super fun. What this game mode does that's so helpful and so streamlined is it basically, earlier in the game, you pick what kind of thrower you want to be. I picked that I wanted to be a scrambler quarterback because I like to run around outside of the pocket. It did lead to a lot of sacks because I'm not particularly good at the game. But basically, you get enough XP, you get an upgrade point, and then it'll give you 4 different like archetypes that you can upgrade, and each upgrade gives you a boost to your overall rating. So not only does it feel like it's way more streamlined in that regard, it feels like getting to a 99 overall is super attainable as long as you're mediocre to good at the game, at least. I am like very mediocre at best at this game, and I felt like I was making good progress. I was consistently hitting challenges. You get XP all the time. It feels like you're leveling up pretty consistently. It feels like your player's getting better, you're getting more abilities, and it does a good job of keeping that loop going in a way that was very satisfactory to me. Throughout the season, you will get text messages from various players, typically if they have the X Factor marker on them, which is a brand new mechanic to Madden 20. I can't tell you a ton about it. I do know that basically there's like set archetypes. You need to hit specific challenges. For instance, because I play for the Raiders, Antonio Brown is the receiver, so I needed to make sure that he got 2 receptions of 20 yards or more, and when he did that, he became in the zone, which gave him boosts to certain stats of his. And then I had a couple of different ones. I know one of them because I picked to be a scrambling quarterback. If I ran for 3 10-yard gains or more, I would become more difficult to tackle if I used special moves like spins and juice and stuff like that. So there are small stat boosts there. I didn't really get too deep into the woods with those. I feel like that's kind of a separate thing. I don't think they were terribly effective for me in this particular game mode because I only play as one player. But you'll get challenges from X Factor stars who'll be like, hey, we see you playing this week, and then you have 3 options. You can either praise him, intimidate him, or disrespect him, and then depending on what happens, you'll get a certain challenge. If you beat the challenge, you get XP. From what I can tell, the game plays fine on the field. I had a good time with it. Granted, I was, for the most part, only controlling one player. It still has a little bit of the weird, like, Madden jank from the switch over to the Frostbite engine, which seems to have given them a lot of, like, very minor technical under the hood problems where, like, the player collision seems a little bit weird. Like, players will get up with other players on top of them that are standing, and they'll, like, elevate, and the ball's extra bouncy and was, like, floating on someone's head once, and it was just kind of like, it seemed like typical, like, video game, like, and I was playing on a version for a little bit at least before the general release. Overall though, I had a lot of fun with this mode. This is a mode that I would like to see stick around. It's a mode that I would like to see evolve to include different positions, running backs, wide receivers, safeties, linebackers, maybe some offensive or defensive linemen. I'd like to see what they do next year to see what they can do to evolve it. I think that they needed to do a better job of either making the story at the beginning matter or just cutting it completely, because at a certain point it becomes just thrown away and useless. But the gameplay on the field is fun. The loop of getting XP and upgrading your character is rewarding and engaging. It's the type of mode that really works well for me, just focusing on one character. If you play this mode, just pray that you get a team that has a good kicker, because the kicker that I have on the Oakland Raiders was terrible and cost me at least 2 games. So, thanks. But that's okay, because I overcame it, and Rico Dynamite, Super Bowl champion. Finally, on this week's show, we'll take a look at this week's new releases, and I'll tell you about what's going on twitch.tv/Shawnosaurus On Blu-ray, Detective Pikachu is out. It's a very fun movie that I enjoyed. Had some problems with it. It has a super creepy looking ditto human being that is just not good. Don't look at that. Don't put that in movies. In theaters, Brian Banks, The Kitchen, and The Peanut Butter Falcon. The Peanut Butter Falcon is the least likely to make it here because it's probably one of those super small Art of Self-Defense / The Farewell movies that will probably start small and expand out over the next couple weeks. So this was its technical release date, so that's why it's on the list, but it may not make the show for a couple more episodes. And only one game this week in Sagebrush. It was a very, very dry week as far as games are concerned. This week's streams are on Wednesday, and then I'm going to take the Friday stream and move it to Thursday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Wednesday is going to be Train Sim World. I'm going to finish up a couple of scenarios in that. Thursday, we're going to celebrate ESPN 8, the Ocho Day. It's 8-8, so Ocho Day, there you go. It's a dodgeball reference if you don't get that. ESPN 8, if it's almost a sport, we've got it. And so we're going to play a really bizarre sports game that's available right now on Xbox Game Pass called Ash's Cricket. That's right, we're going to learn about cricket on Ocho Day, so be sure to tune in for that. Probably be a little bit of a shorter stream, but it should be some goofy fun. And then I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to play on Saturday or Sunday, but I'm sure I'll figure out something. That's what I do best, come up with ideas at the very last minute. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Week in Review. If you like the content, scroll on down and hit that subscribe button and then click the bell so you know when I post new videos. If you like the content that much, you can scroll on down and let me know what you thought of the Face of the Franchise mode in Madden NFL 20. You can tell me about what you thought about the farewell and why you loved it so much. September Mascot Madness is right around the corner, so be sure to go fill out your bracket at challenge.com/sept, S-E-P-T, Mascot Madness. Check out the streams over on twitch.tv/ShawnosaurusRex Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And be sure to check back every single Tuesday for more Week in Review. We'll see you next week.